Well, there's new debate around congressional term limits and the age of America's politicians. After 81-year-old Congresswoman, she was missing 6 months of key House votes. Nobody knew where she was, apparently, but she was eventually found living at a retirement community. Texas Congresswoman Granger has been AWOL on the House floor for months. Her office claims that health challenges have made travel to Washington, quote, difficult. That's all they offered for an explanation. Meantime, her son telling local outlets that she's been dealing with, quote, dementia issues and has experienced a very rapid decline since moving into the retirement facility. The question here is, why are we just learning about this now? 81 years old. She voted as recently as July, Kennedy?
Yeah.
July.
Yeah.
And she wasn't in Washington, and nobody bothered to check to see where she was. Dementia doesn't happen overnight. This has been someone who's been suffering from this for a while. She does, and her family say that she has declined quite a bit since September, but she voted in July.
Yeah, so why is she still holding the office? You know, it's like, what does it take to remove someone? Because that's an abdication of responsibility, and the people in her district deserve to be represented in Congress. If she can't do it, and she clearly cannot, if her son is admitting that she has dementia issues, then she shouldn't be serving. Step aside. I mean, what is the removal process like? We hear about, the 25th Amendment for the president, but...
Yeah, you have to vote on it in the House. But if that case was made, that I'm sure everybody would vote for it. Problem is, yeah, she was well enough to show up at Congress for the unveiling of her portrait. But as we were talking about, Nicole and I were talking about, she didn't vote that day because I don't think she was necessarily capable of voting. So, yes, look, the media never did its job. Mm-hmm. Constituents, I think, were misled by looking at her Twitter feed because she's continuing to post. Who was doing that? I think this... Of all the ethics reports out there, this demands an ethics investigation because what was the staff doing? How were they responding to constituents?
How is that not elder abuse?
Well, how is that? That is so misleading to the constituents and the people that she represents in Texas.
First of all, talk about elder abuse, talk about misleading to the American public, because this is not our only elected official. Ever heard of Joe Biden? I mean, seriously. Joe Biden's mental decline has been of something that we've been talking about for a really long time. And Nicole, it's not just Joe Biden. It's Senator Mitch McConnell. It's Nancy Pelosi. Again, our president, who obviously has cognitive issues. Where do you draw the line? Because it's really irresponsible for these elected officials, right? But their families are condoning it, just like Jill Biden did for years and covered it up.
So it's obviously a very slippery slope what we're talking about here. Some people are saying call for term limits, which, that there's a valid argument for that in general, just to have normal turnover when it comes to our elected Congress. But then some people talk about, well, since we have a minimum age for presidency, maybe we should have a maximum age, which I actually don't agree with, because I think that, there's some sort of intelligence and experience comes with age. But it does come down to whether they are able to mentally and physically perform their job. And that goes beyond Congress. And what she has clearly demonstrated, the moment that they said that she has been struggling with dementia is the moment that she should have been taken out of her seat. Amen. Because she represents the American people. She was voted to be in there. It is a complete failure of her duty to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, the term limits are one thing, right? But like you said, you can't set a maximum age. And an 81-year-old could be very healthy, and then you could have another 81-year-old.
Well, you got Senator Grassley, who's like 90 and as spry as can be. I put him up against anybody. Yeah. But you had a Senator Feinstein who was pretty much incapacitated for a long period of time as well.
I mean, if you look at this, though, as an American who's voting for these people and you're relying on these people and you're trusting these people, what does it say to new people that are coming in? You cannot trust them if they can't make an educated and wise decision to pull themselves out when they're no longer capable of serving their country.
Well, and that's the key point here. And listen, I'll just say, as a Gen Zer, I'm actually pretty sympathetic towards term limits because I'd like to see some more representation in Congress. And I think it's been made very clear that people will not give up political power unless they are literally forced to. We wouldn't even need to have conversations about term limits if people didn't choose to become career politicians. They are supposed to be public civil servants. And that's the real problem with this story, is that Granger was supposed to be a representative for her constituents, who are real people with real needs. And for the past 6 months, they have not had an advocate in Washington. which is her sole responsibility. She deprived them of that right. She failed to do her responsibility. And I don't know who's to blame. I don't know if the family's to blame. I don't know if the staff is to blame. I don't really want to get into...
I think
all of the above.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
the victims here are the people, the constituents she was supposed to represent. Where do they go to get their voice back?
I don't know.
Two things, though.
George
Two things, though.
Santos, he's going to run for her seat.
Yeah, exactly.
Two things, though. The people in that, they have to get rid of these people. It's okay. I beat a 12-year incumbent Republican, okay, when I first ran for Congress. It's okay to vote somebody out. They have to also make these decisions and take some responsibility as well.
But they didn't know. They didn't know where she was
But
at.
they need to know. They need to go figure out.
They weren't trying to find out, it seems. They were just letting it happen because that's the mentality in Washington, that if you don't show up, it's okay.
If you don't show up at your job, you get a call from
Somebody
your
would
boss
notice
saying,
after
where
6
are you?
months.
So if she hasn't come to vote on something since July, why wasn't she getting a phone call? Where are you?
I think that facade was put up there, and it also shows that the national media is not doing her job. You go and look at her website. She's chairman emeritus of the Appropriations Committee. She is in charge of all discretionary spending in the House of Representatives. You wonder why we're in so much trouble? They have somebody who hasn't shown up at their job in the last 6 months. Elon wants to get them back to their desk. That person wasn't at their desk. The other thing is there needs to be term limits for the bureaucracy. Dr. Fauci should have never sat in that seat for 40-plus years. You get too comfortable. If you're going to do term limits, do them for the bureaucracy as well.
They get way too comfortable. That's why she thought it was okay to not show up to work for 6 months. If any of us did that, we'd be fired. A Pew Research poll from earlier this year found that a staggering 87% of Americans were in favor of term limits for Congress. 87%. Obviously, it's not just the Gen Zers. It's all of America. You put somebody in office, at some point, you need a new face. You need some fresh blood. Nancy Pelosi needs to walk off with her cane or crutch.
Mitch McConnell, it's painful to watch him sometimes when he has the moments of just complete
pure
absenteeism.
space.
Well, and Jason,
and Joe Biden.
You raised an interesting point about her seat on the Appropriations Committee, because where were her colleagues? Why didn't they say anything about this? Why did the media have to report it? Why has everyone just been completely silent on her whereabouts?
She's not the only one. I'm sorry, but Congressman Scott is on the Democratic side of the aisle. He is not able to fully function. That's my personal opinion.
And maybe they actually did know, but because the Republicans have such a slim majority, they didn't want to chance the fact that she might not have her seat. Like, there may be some deceit happening
here. But again,
people
you
very
answer to the American people.
They know. They know.
Yeah, and this is the problem, though.
Right.
You answer to the American people. You do not answer to the GOP party apparatus. You do what's best for the constituents first and foremost, always.
Well, that's not what the Biden administration, they knew for years of his cognitive decline, and they covered it up. And so that's the Washington we have been dealt.
Well, so here's a big deal. This is absolutely despicable. And let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and here we go. We have another politician that's been in her seat for such a long period of time, and she has a staff of 25 people. 25 people. I'm a small business owner, and I don't even have 25 employees, okay? So to put that in perspective, she has a staff of 25. There's a person that's dedicated to doing her Twitter feed. She has been absent and checked into a nursing home for the past 6 months. And she apparently has dementia, according to her son. Now, here's a big problem. CNN came out and said the reason that they had not gone ahead and investigated this is because they had a lack of resources. But they sure are covering everything Donald Trump. They sure are covering everything Kamala Harris. They sure are covering everything Joe Biden. And they're covering his vacation days, and they're covering this, and they're covering that. But here we have a very powerful woman who has a very powerful position on the Appropriations Committee, and she was not present at all, and no one bothered to check to see what was going on. Now, here's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the decline has been noticed for the past 3 election cycles. That's 6 years. Not just the 6 months, but she has been having memory lapses for the past 6 years, and her friends and her family and her staff keep having her run. And honestly, this is elder abuse. It truly is. One of her colleagues Jonathan Strickland, who actually ran against her and brought this issue up, said nobody should be mad at Representative Kay Granger. 6 years ago, as an elected official who worked regularly with and around her, it was obvious she had serious memory issues. She had no idea what was going on for a while. Again, yet her friends, family, and staff lied to her and said, no, you should keep going. And this is the result. That obviously, a woman who was in huge decline starting 6 years ago, and her friends and families didn't want her to give up power, so they kept pushing for her to run. And she clearly did not have the mental faculties to do that. Now, Angelica Morabato said, wow, Representative Kay Granger hasn't voted on a bill in 6 months, has been living in a nursing home in secret. Records show, again, that she has that staff of 25 that I told you. If any of them knew, and it would be hard not to know, they are complicit and should be fired. And I couldn't agree more. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is, on the same scale as Joe Biden. It's on the same scale as Dianne Feinstein, the senator from California, who had a mini stroke, and she was in California in the hospital for such a long period of time. And she came back to Congress or the Senate, and staffers had to tell her what to say. There was, a procedural roll call vote, and all she had to say was yes or no. And instead of saying yes or no, she went into this speech, and one of her staffers had to lean forward and say, "Oh, just say no." And then no. I mean, she literally at that point in time was a puppet and just a shell of her former self. Now, her friends and family kept saying, you got to run, and she wound up dying in office. And that is just no way to go, because, people have talked, the Democrat side has talked about the accomplishments that she had. Fine. But nobody remembers those anymore. All they remember is this photograph of her coming back from having this medical procedure and medical issue that she had that took her out of action for a number of months, and she came back in a wheelchair, looking like this, trying to say that she is fully in control of all of her mental acuity, and that is just deceitful for everybody. And so obviously that did her a disservice. It did the nation a disservice. But back to Representative Kay Granger, she should have stepped down a long time ago. It's obviously a Republican district. It's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It's a Republican district. So having her, replaced by somebody or having a special election, more than likely a Republican still would have won that district. I mean, here she is for the past 6 years. It's been weekend at Bernie's for her and for Joe Biden, but for her and she's winning. So I mean, if she can win it, then somebody that is in full control of their mind should be able to win that district as well. So I don't really subscribe to, the Republicans had such a slim majority that they needed to make sure that there was enough Republicans in order to get stuff done. Obviously, she hasn't been voting, so they haven't been counting on her vote anyway. And the biggest issue here is the budget. Having the continuing resolution that took place right before Christmas, and it was a big fight. They were down a vote because of that, because she wasn't voting. So this was just a tragic story all around. You have people like Mitt Romney, who are leaving the U.S. Senate. And, he said it himself. It's time for the next generation of leaders to come into Washington, D.C. No, I don't necessarily agree with term limits. The Constitution doesn't have term limits. The Constitution does have term limits for the president. But the thing is if you're willing to run again, then you should be able to be voting. But the people should know and should vote out people that they don't want anymore. And it's okay to do that and replace them with another Republican. You have Joe Manchin that was a Democrat, and he changed to become an independent, and he said the same thing. He did not run for re-election. And it's okay. It's time for the next generation to come in, and it's good to have these new thoughts and ideas of the populace coming in and being able to, have longevity themselves and make sure that there's continuity of government. Dying in office just creates an abrupt stoppage of government. And, if you're really that old, honestly, 74 should be the cutoff for you to run. You should be done. You should be retiring anyway. But right now, Congress, both the House of Representatives, the Senate, and let's even go in the presidency is the world's most expensive nursing home. It truly is. And this needs to stop. We need to make sure that we have the next generation of leaders coming in. We have a lot of geopolitical issues that are on the horizon, and we need to make sure that we have a group of individuals that are the next generation that can look to and solve this problem. So thank you so much for listening into Azimuth Podcast. Please leave a comment below whether you think that she should have kept running or she should have retired 6 years ago, which is 3 election cycles. So let me know. And thanks so much for watching Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
As President-elect Donald Trump is preparing for a widespread immigration crackdown when he takes office 25 days from now, we're seeing a crack between some of his top advisors and his MAGA base. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are both facing major blowback from their own supporters for not only backing, but encouraging offering more visas to highly skilled foreign workers. Over the Christmas holiday, Musk posted this online saying, "Think of this like a pro sports team. If you want your team to win the championship, you need to recruit top talent wherever they may be." He later added, "I'm referring to bringing in, via legal immigration, the top 0.1% of engineering talent as being essential for America to keep winning." He's talking about H1B visas, which allow employers to hire highly skilled foreign workers. Musk, who himself is from South Africa, said that he once had this kind of visa, and he's arguing that Silicon Valley is facing a shortage of excellent engineering talent, as he put it. But the annual cap on those kinds of visas right now is at 65,000, with another 20,000 for those who get a master's or a doctorate in the U.S. Musk is being backed up by his partner in Trump's government efficiency initiative, Vivek Ramaswamy. He says it's a cultural issue that there aren't more competitive engineers in the U.S. Here's what he said online: "A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World, or Zach and Slater over Screech and Saved by the Bell, or Stefan over Steve Urkel and Family Matters will not produce the best engineers." But that argument is not going over well with Trump's MAGA base, certainly not online. Some of them saying, "We did not ask them to engineer an immigration policy. Tech wants indentured servants, not high-skilled workers. You don't even know what MAGA immigration policy is." Now, Trump himself, who I should note restricted H-1B visas in his first term, has said on the campaign trail this time around that he did want to make it easier for educated foreigners to work in the U.S.
What I want to do and what I will do is you graduate from a college, I think you should get automatically as part of your diploma a green card to be able to stay in this country. And that includes junior colleges too. Anybody graduates from a college, you go in there for 2 years or 4 years. If you graduate or you get a doctorate degree from a college, you should be able to stay in this country.
So welcome back to Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb. So here we go. We have CNN, MSNBC have been having a field day over the weekend that says that there are now fractures inside the MAGA movement over this because Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk have had said something, and you've got Ann Coulter, Laura Loomer, and even former Representative Matt Gaetz saying, "Hey, look, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what MAGA is. We didn't ask you to come up with immigration policy." And so it looked like there was this infighting that was happening, and Musk doubled down. Vivek Ramaswamy doubled down and said, "Look, you guys are wrong." And so here's why Elon Musk and Vivek are correct, because Donald Trump himself later on this weekend said, "No, I actually agree with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and their policy on the visas." to let skilled workers come in is hugely beneficial for the United States. The problem with immigration that we're having is the illegal immigration that people are sneaking across the border who have either very little skills or no skills whatsoever, and they are sneaking in and overwhelming our immigration policy. Having a controlled flow of intelligent, highly skilled people coming into the United States is hugely beneficial to us. We need more immigrants. The United States is a nation of immigrants. We need immigrants. We just need legal immigrants. And being able to increase this particular category of visa is going to be super critical to the future of the United States, letting in these highly educated, highly skilled workers. Again, a lot of what happens is a foreign nation send their best and their brightest to the United States. And they get, and whether it be from China or India or from Eastern Europe or Australia, they come and get a world-class university education in science and engineering, and then they take that information and go back to their home countries in order for them to help their home countries. Just think of the brain drain that happens when all of that institutional knowledge leaves the country and goes and benefits another country like China. What we need is Donald Trump is exactly right. We need to make sure that these people are given a green card to encourage them to stay and keep that intellectual horsepower here in the United States. So I couldn't disagree more with Laura Loomer, Ann Coulter, and Matt Gaetz on this subject. I'm glad Donald Trump jumped back in to say, hey, look, no, they're right. We need intellectual horsepower to come into the United States. Now, I did think it was a little funny in Vivek Ramaswamy's tweet, talking about celebrating the high school prom cheerleader over, the person who wins the science Olympiad. Of course, I mean, there's that famous Bill Gates moment when he went to a high school, and I want to say it was in the late 80s, early 90s, and he was giving a speech on education, the value of education and things like that. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have a clip of it, but he basically said to the jocks, like, you need to be nice to the nerds because someday they're going to be your boss. And, that's apparently the student body laughed and stuff like that. But that's kind of what Vivek Ramaswamy is getting at, is celebrating the jock over, the science, engineering, academic decathlon team. Yes, we value sports and physical prowess, but we should have equal, accolades and respect for all those smart kids out there that are going to be the future of this country. And if we can't grow them here, then we need to steal them from everywhere else in order to keep making our country great again. And I just really wanted to press this home. A lot of times people get confused over the different types of visas, and the two biggest issues that we have are, as far as illegal immigration, one is the illegal immigrants that are coming across the border, they're sneaking across, but the other is people overstaying their visas, right? That's the second biggest, that they did get a visa to come here and they've overstayed their visa. And a lot of times that's student visas. So, this H1B visa is critical to the success and future of the United States of America. I'm glad that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have mentioned this. It's an important subject to talk about. Immediately, there were a bunch of people that are in the MAGA movement that came out and accused them of not being MAGA enough. And luckily, Trump came down and said, look, no, they're on the right path for this. Now, again, the media, CNN, MSNBC, took this as infighting and saying already there's trouble in the coalition. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have been accused of being shadow presidents, and Trump's not really in charge. For Trump to come in and say, nope, we're all on the same sheet of music, just kind of puts that fractured narrative that the liberal media is trying to portray straight to bed. There's nothing else needs to be talking about, but still, they're trying. So what do you think? What do you think about the H1B visa and whether or not it's an important strategic initiative that we need to increase to allow the brain power to stay here inside the United States? Leave a comment below and let me know what you think about having these specialized visas and increasing the amount of people that are coming in. Well, thanks so much for tuning into Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all of the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Trump just said Merry Christmas as well, and look what he said. He said Governor Justin Trudeau of Canada, whose citizens are taxed too high, but if Canada was to become our 51st state, their taxes would be cut by more than 60%. Sounds pretty good.
Does sound pretty good. America's neighbors to the north are hopping on the MAGA train. I've heard they call themselves Maple MAGAs. Some Canadians jumping at President-elect Trump's offer of huge tax cuts if they become the 51st state. We shall see. Kevin O'Leary, chairman of O'Leary Ventures, Mr. Wonderful, joins us now. Kevin, you are a man from the north. This is your native land. What are you hearing? Is this for real? What are you hearing from people up there?
More than half of Canadians, there's 41 million of them, want to know more, want to understand what the proposal really is, because the concept of an economic union has been bandied around for 40 years. And it makes sense because the resources Canada have, the U.S. needs, particularly power and water. But there's something else. You know, we've been talking about the border between Canada and the United States. That's not the problem. The Pentagon is worried and has been for decades about the northern border where China and the USSR are. And we had NORAD decades ago, but China was a nothing burger back then. Now they're a serious problem. And I think in this kernel of an idea, and yes, maybe it was a joke to start, there is something great here to be done, because if you figured out a way to put these two countries together, it would be the most powerful country on earth, the most powerful military on earth, the most powerful in resources. And no adversary anywhere would mess with it. That's the prize.
Yeah. Let's start with this idea that this is just the beginning of negotiations. People are talking about it. I want to just throw up a survey. They actually polled Canadians about this already. And this is what Canadians said about becoming the 51st state. 13% said yes, so there is a crowd there. 82% said no. But Kevin, what you're saying is maybe it doesn't have to be about taking the land. Maybe you can broker some kind of an economic union. That's what you want to help do, right?
Yeah, that poll is irrelevant. The opportunity is combining strengths. You don't have to sell the country. You don't have to even merge it. But you can create a union where you put together the things that matter: a common currency, a common passport, free-flowing trade across the border, particularly in energy. And think about what that means. Right now, the U.S. grid is tapped out. You can't find a gigawatt of electrical power. There's unlimited power in Canada. And even Eric Schmidt said that at Google because they're concerned about building data centers. All of these opportunities exist. Now, unfortunately for Trump, these ministers are going down to talk to him, Mar-a-Lago, are going to get wiped out in 90 days in a national election. Trudeau is immensely unpopular, and Canadians cannot wait to get rid of him. So this may have to wait from an official standpoint, but many Canadians are interested in understanding more about how we could push this idea forward, and I'm one of them. I think this is a great idea, and I think the potential is massive, and the opportunity is huge. And I think at the end of the day, Canadians and Americans, their DNA is the same in terms of what they believe in: freedom. They fought in multiple wars together. I say let's make this happen one way or another and end up the strongest entity on earth. I'm worried about China. I really am. I think we're in the beginning of a long economic war. And if we're stronger and protecting the northern border and really making it hell for them around the world with our philosophy of freedom and commerce and strength, that's a good thing.
Are you going down to Mar-a-Lago?
I'd love to go down to Mar-a-Lago. You know, I'm obviously interested in it because I do business on both sides of the border. And I'm going to the inauguration. I'm excited about it. I have a lot of projects in both countries. I work with senators and governors, and I walk the aisles of the Hill all the time, as I do in Ottawa. You can't do business anymore unless you're working with leadership in both countries. So I'm a big advocate of figuring out how to get this thing together.
Well, if you can get it together, Kevin, please give us the scoop. We want to break it with you right here.
Look, I'm a very rational guy. I could make this happen with nobody be unhappy about it.
I bet you could. Big ideas, but exciting times. Kevin O'Leary, happy holidays.
So is Canada going to become the 51st state? Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. My name is Barrett McNabb. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. Plus, I don't even think it would be a good 51st state. I think you would split those up into 9 states and then have them integrate, because that would be one huge state. But how did this happen? Well, Donald Trump has been talking about tariffs and is talking about levying tariffs 25% on both Mexico and on Canadian goods. Obviously, both countries are like, hey, what's going on? Trump is doing this because this has been an unfair trade imbalance for the United States, where the United States has trade deficits with multiple countries. The biggest one is China. But still, when he said that he was going to slap a tariff on the Canadian goods, Justin Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Trump. And just as a, joking, he called him governor. And said, you could be the 51st state. And it became this little running joke, and Trudeau went back to Canada. But then he kind of lambasted Trump on the idea of the 51st state and not the idea of tariffs. And Trump tweeted back either on his True Social or on X. I don't recall which one, but said, hey, calm down, Governor Trudeau. And so that kind of, got this thing going that, talking about the 51st state. Now, again, it's not going to happen, but it is kind of interesting because that poll where was only 13% and 87% said no, 13% said yes. It's interesting where they took that poll. If they took that poll in Quebec, I bet that's where you get the 87% no. If they had taken that poll in British Columbia on the far western side of Canada, where Vancouver is, you might have gotten a higher result. Before my father passed away, he lived in Blaine, Washington, which is right at the border. In fact, there's the Peace Arch that's there just outside of Blaine, and it talks about it's a monument to the world's longest undefended border. And so the customs facility is right there, and you go further north on the main highway there, and you hit Vancouver. So my father's next door neighbor, they were actually Canadian, and they were liberals. They were liberal Canadians, and they often pontificated on why Canada is not part of the United States yet. They said, look, we think it's going to happen. It's a matter of time when. And to Kevin O'Leary's point, Mr. Wonderful, Canada has water, and the United States is desperately in need of water in multiple states, the electricity, but also in natural resources as well. If you look at Canada, it's one of the largest countries in the world. I think it's second to Russia, but still, as far as landmass. But still, when you look at it, there's hardly anybody in the country. It's a very small population, and they're mostly scattered on the east and west coast. And you have, you have various, huge tracts of land, and it's an amazing untapped natural resource. If you couldn't imagine that you have Alaska and all the resources that are there, and you just continue east all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, it's going to have the same types of resources and oil and things like that Alaska has, and it just would be just an amazing opportunity on both sides of the border if we did become one nation. Now, here's the big problem. Canada is socialized, right? They have a lot of socialism programs, and so they would need to be reintroduced to pure capitalism, and to make sure that the government is not spoon feeding you like they do in Canada. So they would have to have a little bit of a re-education on how capitalism and free markets work and things like that, because they have a lot of social programs that border on the same as the socialism that you have inside some of the healthcare systems of Europe and things like that. But still, this would be a windfall for both countries. This is one of those things that it would be a win-win. The Canadian military is already integrated and utilizes most of the hardware that we have in the United States. They use the F-18, they use the Stryker. No, they have some of their own stuff that they've purchased from other countries. They even attempted to make their own in-house fighter jet, and it never did come to fruition. But still, they're linked in with NORAD. They utilize the Link 16 system to have aircraft communications and things like that. So they are already integrated into our society. They just drink a lot more maple syrup than we do. In fact, that they drink shots of maple syrup. So I don't know if I'd ever be able to get used to that because I'm not a big sugar person. But still, this was very interesting to look at. And I know Trump did it initially as a joke, but it has legs. It has legs, and there is interest on both sides of the border. Now, of course, Justin Trudeau is going to say no because he doesn't want to give up power and become a governor. But still, as an initial first step, I think it got the conversations rolling, and I think that's what Donald Trump wanted to do is to get conversations going, because negotiations start when somebody says something. So, what do you think? Should Canada become part of the United States? I don't think of it, should it be the 51st state, or should it be broken up into the province they have, and each one of those provinces becomes a state? So tell me in the comments below what you think about this. I think it's pretty interesting to talk about. It probably will never happen in the next 50 years, but probably within the next 100 years, I can definitely see this happening. So thanks so much for tuning in to Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned out of these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all of the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.